WC. Pastor Sean here again, doing another segment for Diggin. Today we're going to talk a little bit about understanding where you are in the Bible, right? Knowing where you are in the Bible can really help you to understand what you're reading and why what you're reading is important and how it fits into the entire story. Because sometimes there's just stuff that you read that doesn't make sense. And knowing what's around it is important. It'd be kind of like if I jumped into the Lord of the Rings and I started in the middle movies and I'd be like, why are these hobbits walking around in the woods with a ring? And why is the ring important? And right, you just get confused because you're like, I don't know how it all fits together. And the same is true with the Bible. Sometimes you have to zoom out a little bit and understand what's going on in history to be able to see how the pieces all fit together. So as an example of this, we're going to dive into the book of Ruth. Now, the book of Ruth is this tiny little 4-chapter story about a family that there was a famine in Israel and they leave and then some of them die and they come back and there's this Moabite girl named Ruth and she stays with her mother-in-law and then they get redeemed and get their land back and all of a sudden everything's happy, right? But it's this weird story between Judges and 1 Samuel and it doesn't feel like it belongs until you zoom out a little bit and get a bit of a sense of where it is in the Bible, and then it starts to make a lot more sense. So for example, when we look at the book of Ruth, so when you're kind of doing a study, look for little clues, like for example, in the days when the judges ruled. Okay, great, so this story is in the time when the judges ruled. So the first thing I should do is jump over to Judges. So if I jump over to the end of the book of Judges, the last verse says, in those days there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own sight. Not a ringing endorsement. But it does show the problem. There was not a king in Israel. There wasn't anyone to lead. And so that was the major problem. Well, that helps us when we read through the rest of the book of Ruth to kind of understand a little bit as to why that book is important. Because at the end of the book of Ruth, we actually see a genealogy that comes from Ruth all the way to King David, who's the king that God provides for his people. So what we see by understanding where Ruth was written in the Bible and seeing where it is in that context, we get to see something really cool. God, in the midst of this problem situation in Judges, actually creates for himself a family line through which he will provide Israel the king that they ultimately need. And so next time you're diving into the scripture, make sure to take a moment to step back and go, what's going on around this situation in the Bible? And it can give you some really, really good clues as to how this story fits into the overall narrative of what God is trying to say through the Bible.